Hello students, welcome to this program titled General Principles, Maxims and Fundamentals of Teaching. The objectives set for the present session are to know the concept of teaching and learning, to study the principles of teaching, to understand the maxims of teaching and to know the fundamentals of teaching. Teaching and learning process has occupied an important place in the field of education. Teaching and learning are two fundamental aspects of education process. Both are closely related to each other. One cannot be divorced from the other. The most important objective of teaching is to facilitate learning. Whenever there is teaching, there will be learning. Thus, the concept of teaching is incomplete without learning. Teaching is a singular job and a complex task. By all means, it is done for the benefit of the pupil, that is, to bring desirable change or improvement in their behavior. Success of this operation depends upon a good planning and masterly execution of the same. The educationists, psychologists, research workers, and the teachers working in the fields have tried to establish some general principles, psychological principles and maxims of teaching, which may prove quite helpful in making the task of teaching quite effective and purposeful. For the successful teaching, it's essential to know how the pupils learn and by which methods they learn. Since the teaching methods and strategies are based on certain principles, therefore, it's essential for a teacher to follow the principles of teaching. The principles are necessary to control the behavior. In order to control the behavior of a teacher, two types of teaching principles are emphasized: general principles of teaching, psychological principles of teaching. First, we will discuss general principles of teaching. There are some general principles of teaching that have emerged from the general experiences principles that are as principle of definiteness of goal or objectives. Teaching should start with the definite aim. In the absence of definite aim, a teacher might go astray and at the same time his teaching might lack coherence and definiteness. A teacher without clear knowledge of goals or purpose of his teaching is similar to that sailor who does not know the destination of his boat moving in a vast ocean. If a teacher knows his or her task in terms of well-defined instructional or educational objectives or goals, he may win half the battle. Definiteness of goals helps teacher at every step, phase or act of teaching. Teacher may plan, execute and evaluate all the aspects of his teaching in the light of the stipulated objectives. It makes teaching and learning interesting, effective, precise and definite. Principle of planning. The success of any task or the activity depends upon the quality of pre-planning. The success of teaching-learning process is directly proportional to the planning. Successful or good teaching is always well planned. A teacher, therefore, should try to plan and prepare the details of his lesson in the form of lesson notes before delivery. Planning involves selection, division, and revision. Planning must include the establishment of instructional objectives in behavioral terms and the relevant subject matter and its organization into proper unit. Principle of flexibility and elasticity. The teaching act requires proper planning beforehand, but it does not mean that it should become rigid and stereotyped. It should be arranged according to the environment and circumstances. The teacher should be resourceful, original, imaginative, and creative enough to adapt himself to the requirements of the students and the teaching-learning situation. Therefore, the principle of flexibility and elasticity needs to be observed for enabling the teacher to deal effectively with the aroused situation. Principle of utilizing experiences. Experiences serve the base for acquiring new knowledge, so teaching should be linked with already acquired knowledge and experiences. This facilitates the teaching act and helps in achieving the stipulated objectives with great ease and economy. There is no state like complete vacuum in the process of teaching. At any stage, there exists an entry behavior which provides a base and starting point for bringing desirable change or further improvement in the behavior of the child. Principle of being child-centered. Teaching is aimed to bring about desirable change in the behavior of a child. Therefore, it's essential to adopt child-centered approach in all aspects of teaching. The curriculum, methods, techniques and management of teaching, learning environment and evaluation should serve the cause of the pupil. Principles of making provision for individual differences. Nothing is alike in nature. We all differ in terms of innate and acquired traits, abilities and capacities. Some are slow learners and others are quite fast. In this continuum of growth and development, entry behavior and acquisition of abilities in the cognitive, conative and affective domains, all children occupy different positions. Therefore, a good teaching should make adequate provision for individual differences. The teaching which does not cater to the needs and abilities of the individual child cannot be expected to achieve specific goals or bringing desirable change in the behavior of all children. Therefore, by all means, teaching is to be designed, performed and evaluated in the view of the principle of individual difference. Principle of linking with actual life. Life and learning should become two poles of same magnet. They become so interdependent that none can exist without the other. The artificial division of knowledge in the form of different subjects stands for facilitating the task of teaching and therefore should not be taken as watertight compartments in themselves. There exist intimate links among various subjects. Good teaching implies that learning must be vitally linked with life of the learner and other subjects of their syllabus. Knowledge is one whole. For example, the topic of insurance can be taught by arranging a visit to the local office of the Life Insurance Corporation, or it can be related with some local examples of persons who died uninsured and others who have got themselves insured before death. The topic can be elaborated by making references to social evils which insurance attempts to eradicate or some problems for finding the rate and amount of premium can be understood and solved. Principle of active participation and involvement. A good teaching should always be two-way traffic, making the task of teaching a cooperative effort of the teacher and the taught. Teaching is like a current flowing in a live wire with the teacher and the taught at its two ends. A teacher is trying to flow the current of knowledge without the involvement of the students is unnecessarily wasting his energy and the resource of the community. A good teacher for effective results always tries to seek active participation of the students in the teaching learning process. Children learn the best through self-activity, but that activity must be psychologically sound. Learning by doing removes the dullness of the lesson and puts the children in the life situation. Hence, teaching should be so organized as to provide maximum opportunities to the child to learn by doing. Just for example, the students can get training in the social behavior by actually organizing and participating in the activities of dramatic club, debating society, Girl Guide campus, picnic and Red Cross society. Principle of conducive environment and proper control. Conducive environment and proper control facilitates teaching and learning. Teaching and learning can proceed effectively in an ideal social and physical environment. The role of a conducive and effective management of the control of teaching-learning situations can never be denied in any form of teaching. Environmental factors like proper seating arrangement, ventilation, light, classroom interaction, and group dynamics, discipline, and the tone of school always influence the teaching-learning process. Therefore, care should be taken for their desirable arrangement and control. Principle of democracy. Successful teaching is democratic. The teacher should create a democratic environment in class. He should think that each individual is entitled to equal rights with every other individual in the class. He should have no feeling that a particular student is rich, and as such he should be taught properly. The students should not be taught keeping in view their caste, creed, or religion. A teacher should treat all the students as the members of the same family belonging to one caste and following one religion. The teacher should also put himself at par with the students. In other words, he should think that he is also a member of the family of the students and not a ruler of the family. Good teaching is characterized by the observance of these general principles. Like an artist, a teacher must know and apply these principles which help him in acquiring proficiency in his profession. Now we will discuss psychological principles of teaching. Psychological principles of teaching are different from the general ones. Psychological principles of teaching are those principles which make teaching stimulating and effective by taking into account the psychology of the child. These principles have resulted through the experiments and research of the field of psychology of learning and teaching. Directly or indirectly, they stimulate and influence the teaching process and make it more effective. Some of the psychological principles are like principle of motivation and interest. Motivation and interest are two central factors in any process of teaching and learning. The theories of motivation, interest, and laws of learning, like law of readiness, have established the validity of these two factors. Motives are the potent forces that energize or activate all behaviors of an individual. The objectives of bringing desirable change in behavior can only be achieved if one is motivated to try or accept that change in his behavior. Similarly, interest provides key to the learning and desired change. The saying that you can take a horse to water but you cannot make it drink fits equally with a child who is made to learn something for bringing desirable change in his behavior. It is said that half the battle is won if the students are truly motivated for the lesson. Motivation is the petrol that drives the mental engine. Motivation not only promotes but also facilitates learning. For example, in schools, many students find it difficult to remember the properties of the gases. Merely drilling and repeating these properties in a dull and dry task. A wise teacher would urge them to find these properties by applying relevant tests in the laboratory. The students have liking for practical work. The child's love of play and activity is utilized for creating motivation through practical work. Curiosity is a very strong urge which can be exploited for motivation. Principle of change, rest and recreation. Psychological experiments in learning have demonstrated the ill effects of monotony, fatigue and lack of attention in learning tasks. Teaching-learning process followed by rest and change refreshes the minds and prepares the learners for more and effective learning. Change in stimulus and other types of change. Principle of feedback and reinforcement. Feedback and reinforcement play an important role in the process of teaching and learning. A pupil repeats the response that is reinforced. and discontinuous responses that are not reinforced. The immediate knowledge of positive reinforcer in the form of praise, grade, certificates and other incentives may work wonders in the field of teaching and learning. The knowledge of results should be given to the pupils as quickly as possible. The principle of providing feedback and reinforcement results in quick and effective learning. Principle of sympathy and cooperation. Sympathetic attitude on the part of the teacher is an essential prerequisite of successful teaching. Successful teaching cannot take place in a situation that lacks sympathy and kindness with the interests and needs of the student. A good teacher is a friend, philosopher and guide. He is not to dictate or direct the students but walk along with them on the track of learning. He is to provide educate encouragement and guidance by seeking sympathy and cooperation. He is to become a part and parcel of the group and is supposed to lead. He should keep in mind the shortcomings, limitations and difficulties of the students. Their individual differences should be recognized and congenial environment should be created in the class. Congenial environment is an environment of mutual understanding, respect, consideration and faith. Scolding, nagging and rebuking have no place in good teaching. Principle of providing training to senses. Senses are the gateway to knowledge. Research in the field of learning have clearly established the importance of the senses in acquiring any type of learning experiences. Teaching and learning become more effective if senses are effectively trained and utilized. The power of observation, identification, discrimination, experimentation, application and generalization can be developed through a proper training and functioning of senses. Therefore, the teacher should make proper arrangement for the training of senses, especially the sense of sight and hearing of the students. Of all the senses, the sense of sight is the most vivid and provides rich experiences to the individual. Results of studies show that nearly 80% of experiences gained by a person are received through the sense of sight, 10% of the experiences through the sense of hearing and 10% through other senses. Principle of fostering creativity and self-expression. Teaching should be based on the principle of developing creativity and self-expression. It should work as an effective medium for self-expression so that students may develop their talents and abilities. Usually teachers feel happy if the students reproduce that material exactly in the same manner. This practice should be discouraged. The teacher should encourage and praise the students whenever they put forth new, original and imaginative ideas. As development of the nation depends upon creative ideas, it becomes imperative that teachers should create situations in the classroom that inculcate creativity and self-expression among students. Now we'll discuss maxims of teaching. Experience is said to be a good teacher and a trusted guide. Educationists and teachers engaged in the task of actual classroom teaching have evolved certain simple notions and working ways based on their own experiences, which may prove quite helpful in the task of teaching. These are known as maxims of teaching. They are quite trustworthy, time-honored and universal. They are like, proceed from known to unknown. The child knows something and we are to enlarge his knowledge. The law of working of mind is that all new knowledge is to be interpreted in terms of the old. So, we should link up our work in school with the life and experience of our pupils. If we link new knowledge with the old knowledge, we shall make our teaching clearer and more definite. Hence, known can always prove a reliable base for making acquaintance with the unknown. Just for example, a known friend or an individual may work as a source for acquaintance with other people. Similarly, previous knowledge of a particular subject or topic may help us to collect new information and explore the unknown. After acquiring knowledge and skills in solving problems on addition and subtraction, one can learn easily the essentials of multiplication and division. Proceed from definite to indefinite. A good teaching should always lead from definite to indefinite. One can always trust the tested or definite, and therefore definite things, concepts, events or knowledge may be easily approached for catching the indefinite ones. Definiteness of the known facts in a multiplication table may help a student to acquire the knowledge or skills concerning thousands of odd combinations related to multiplication, division, square or cube roots. Similarly, definite rules of the grammar may help a student learn the concerned language effectively. Proceed from simple to complex. The teacher should first present simple or easy ideas and then complex or difficult ideas. But simplicity or complexity of ideas should be determined from child's point of view and not from the point of view of teacher or parents. If the teacher proceeds from complex to simple, then initiative and interest of the students will be crushed. Hence, the teacher should start with most striking features of a topic and then add further details. Just for example, in order to teach different parts of flowers to the children, and they should be asked to know their color and fragrance. After these different parts of the flower can be explained to children. Proceed from concrete to abstract. Abstract is confusing, difficult to understand and subjective. One may be easily bored, fatigued, perplexed and lose one's patience while attending to an abstract phenomenon. It is difficult to be remembered and applied in practical situations. In contrast, concrete is relatively simple, understandable and objective. Acquisition of new knowledge or skill may become a simpler task when it is supported with concrete examples, objects and events. A good teaching should lead from concrete to abstract. The concrete material is to be shown, living examples are to be given, and the children should be given maximum opportunities for acquiring direct experiences in order to make them able to learn the abstract concepts and experiences at the later stage. Proceed from general to particular. Particular facts are easier to understand as compared to general facts. Particular is more definite for child as contrast with the general. Generalized facts, principles, concepts and phenomena are quite abstract in nature and therefore should not be presented in the beginning of teaching. A teacher who begins by saying that matter has weight and then presents particular examples or provides demonstrations related with particular solids, liquids or gases is placing horse before the cart. One cannot generalize without facing or acquainting oneself with a particular instance leading to the generalization of fact or behavior. Therefore, teachers should always begin with the learning or experiencing of particular cases, facts or instances and then persuade his students to generalize or conclude. Proceed from whole to parts. According to Gestalt School of Psychology, whole is more important and meaningful than parts. Whole is more understandable, motivating and effective than the study of various parts. Whole is too greater than the parts. Therefore, the beginning should always be made with whole, and then step by step in various parts or constituents should be presented before the students. Example in teaching topic parts of the flower. The beginning should be made with the actual presentation of the whole flowering plants, and then gradually the knowledge of the elements and functioning of different parts should be presented. Similarly, a model of the water pump and the actual working of this pump should be demonstrated as a whole, and then the study and working of its parts should be taken step by step. Proceed from induction to deduction. Induction means drawing a conclusion from set of examples. For example, we find that a crow is black, another crow is black, still another crow is also black. We then come to the conclusion that all crows are black. The processes of induction calls for perception, reasoning, judgment and generalization. The teacher should proceed from induction to deduction. That's first of all, present the principle of or generalization before students and then verify the truth by this principle by applying it to the particular instances or examples. Induction discovers the knowledge and deduction is the consequence of such discoveries. Proceed from empirical to rational. In a teaching learning process, it's always safe to begin with what we see, we feel and experience, then with what we agree, generalize or explain. The former approach is empirical while the later is rational. Development of the rational point of view is a goal, a result of a process of empirical finding. The concrete facts or empirical evidences are the rock bottom of a conclusion or rational knowledge. The rational thinking is not the product of empty ideas or lofty ideals having no naked truth or concrete happenings. A teacher has to place facts, evidences, direct or indirect experiences, examples and instances full of objectivity and validity to arrive at some conclusion. He has to develop a rational point of view in understanding the nature and concepts of the objects, pupil, events and phenomena. Therefore, in good teaching, one should always lead the student from empirical to rational goals. Proceed from psychological to logical. Psychological point of view emphasizes the importance of psychological principles of learning and teaching in the process of education. Psychological approach takes into consideration the pupil, his interest, abilities, aptitudes, developmental levels, needs and reactions. Logical approach considers the subject matter and its arrangement in logical order and steps. Firstly, the teacher should keep in mind the psychological selection of the subject matter to be presented. After this, he should have logical approach to arrange the matter into logical order and steps. An eminent writer remarked, logical procedure has its place in the middle of the lesson, but the approach must be determined psychologically. Therefore, a wise teacher cares for a beautiful integration of psychological principles to logical arrangement in his teaching. He is to move on in a psychological track, keeping in view the logic behind his sequences of activities. So, in order to make the teaching successful and effective, the teacher should utilize all the set maxims and present the subject matter accordingly. It should be remembered that these maxims are meant to be our servants and not masters. They are means, not ends. In fact, the use of these maxims should be guided by the nature of the child. They are not to be followed blindly on every occasion and in every lesson. They are simply guides that will help us very often. This is all related to our today's topic, that is general principles, maxims and fundamentals of teaching. Hope you have enjoyed and understood. Thank you for watching.